Hi, everyone. My name is Erin McGroarty. I'm one of the political reporters here at the Cap Times. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this forum featuring the Democratic candidates for Assembly District 77. In just a moment, I'll be turning this over to our moderator, Andrew Bahl, but I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for watching live or perhaps tuning in down the road once we have this posted to our website. If you're looking for more information about this race or others in Wisconsin between now and the elections, be sure to visit captimes.com and click on the Elections 2024 logo. That will take you to our elections page where we'll have information about candidate forums, races, voting information, anything having to do with the election. Another great way to keep up on what's happening politically in Wisconsin is to subscribe to our free politics newsletter, Wedge Issues, which Andrew and I send out every Friday. It's got short recaps of our coverage of the past week, plus links to lots of great coverage elsewhere. And you can sign up at captimes.com/newsletters. But we have a lot to cover tonight with our candidates. So without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, who helps me cover state government and politics. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Aaron, and thanks for that introduction. I'm Andrew Bahl. I am one of myself and Aaron covering Wisconsin government and politics, and I will be your moderator tonight. This is the Cap Times Candidate Forum for the 77th Assembly District. It is the fourth of six forums and debates that the Cap Times is hosting for each of the contested primary races for state assembly and state senate that represent Dane County and which voters will see on the August 13th primary ballot. A lot of these districts changed under new legislative maps enacted earlier this year, and we want you all to have the best information that you need before heading to the polls. We are obviously live on Zoom right now, but if you miss some of this or you want to share with a friend, this will be posted on our website sometime in the next day or so you can check it out there. We are joined tonight by the three candidates in the Democratic primary for the 77th Assembly District: Chuck Erickson, Renuka Mayadev, and Thad Schumacher. The 77th District includes the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus, Vilas, Greenbush, Arbor Hills, and Dudgeon Monroe neighborhoods in Madison, as well as the village of Shorewood Hills. And the winner of this primary will serve as the next representative for the 77th District because there is not a Republican candidate on the November general election ballot. Each of our candidates will get 2 minutes for their opening and closing statements. And in between, I will be asking them a variety of questions about issues that are important to our readers. And most of these questions, in fact, came from issues that we heard about when chatting with voters in listening sessions and online outreach that we did earlier this year that Aaron and I did to kind of craft our election coverage strategy. Because we have three candidates, not every candidate will be asked every question, except for two questions that I will ask each of them right off the bat at the start of the debate. But each candidate will have the chance to, raise their hand and chime in for up to 1 minute and, talk a bit about a question or an issue they're passionate about. And they can do that for up to 4 times. We randomly determined the order of opening statements before the start of the forum, and Renuka Mayadev was the lucky winner. Miss Mayadev, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement starting now. Oh, I think you are still muted.
Hi, thank you, Andrew. I'm Renuka Mayadev, and I'm running for State Assembly District 77 to represent you in the state legislature. I'm a mother of two, daughter of immigrants, and I've worked my entire career for women, children, and families. I work at the UW School of Medicine and Public Health on improving outcomes for women and children across Wisconsin. I'm a graduate of Georgetown Law School and have worked on policy throughout my career in state government, working for a Democratic governor, at the United Way, and then also at the Children's Defense Fund. I'm running to be a representative because our rights are under attack by the ultra MAGA right. I've been endorsed by Governor Jim Doyle, Lieutenant Governor Barb Lawton, Senator Kelda Roys, Representative Fran Hong, and many others. My rights, my daughter's rights, and our children's rights are under attack here in Wisconsin and across the country. We cannot go back to an 1849 law before women had the right to vote and before the Civil War. We must have complete control over our bodies. As I mentioned, I work at the UW School of Medicine and Public Health, and I know that our OBGYNs need their entire toolbox to take care of women and make sure their health is a priority. I stand for reproductive freedom, and we can enshrine this right when we flip the assembly and put it in the Constitution, and I'll be working on that from day one. Our democracy is under attack. The Wisconsin GOP embraces election denial and threatens Megan Wolf, our nonpartisan election head, with removal or worse. It's vital for the state legislature to stand up to any undue influence or partisan manipulation. We can put a voter law into
Aaron,
statute.
was that time that you read? Okay. Sorry to cut you off, but
No, that's okay. That's
try
okay.
and keep it
Yeah.
equal.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Supervisor Erickson, you are up next.
Okay. All right. Am I coming through? Okay, great. Hi, I'm Chuck Erickson. I'm a candidate running for Assembly District 77. Thanks to the Capital Times, my opponents, and especially those of you watching. This evening, I'm going to talk about what I've done for the residents of District 77 in my 22 years as an openly gay Dane County Board Supervisor and resident for over 30 years. I'm going to share with you my work on the Dane County Board, the impact on the people of District 77, and how that has prepared me to be an effective legislator. I grew up in a small town near Madison. My mother was a public school teacher in the Madison School District. I moved to Madison for college and have a degree in international relations and an MBA from Edgewood College. My priorities as a state legislator are straightforward. First, it's unconscionable that women have lost a fundamental human right. It's fortunate that the state legislature can restore the right to abortion. There's no question this must be my first legislative priority. Second, we are not doing enough to take care of our children and young people. Childcare is in crisis, public schools are dramatically underfunded, and our colleges and universities are not getting the resources they respect and deserve. Third, the attacks on the LGBTQIA+ community is increasing. We need to finish the work of protecting the human rights of LGBTQIA+ citizens. Finally, we must make investments and create regulations that reduce climate change. A big part of that is holding polluters accountable. Due to my record, I'm proud to say that I've been endorsed by organized labor, including ASME and SEIU, as well as many trusted elected officials in Dane County, including former Dane County Executive Kathleen Falk, Sheriff Calvin Barrett, Alder Tag Evers, and many other city and county elected officials. This may be the only time that I have to thank everyone who I've met while going door to door. I've personally knocked on doors throughout District 77, and I look forward to representing you in the Wisconsin Assembly. Thanks.
And last but not least, Mr. Schumacher, you have 2 minutes starting now.
I'm Thad Schumacher, and for over a decade, I've been serving our community as a pharmacist on the front line of healthcare. As a healthcare professional who takes the time to talk to people in our community, I see how so many people struggle with our broken healthcare system. But that problem I see goes far beyond healthcare. I see people struggle with rising costs of living, the impacts of climate change and pollution, and attacks on our democracy and our fundamental right for bodily autonomy, whether that be reproductive healthcare or queer and trans rights. Over more than a decade working for the people of Madison, I have built a record of solving problems and in and out of the Capitol. I served for 2 terms as the chair of a Wisconsin Pharmacy Examining Board, to which I was confirmed by the Senate unanimously twice. As chair, I took on Scott Walker's attempts to deregulate healthcare and worked for bills that would reduce prescription drug costs. Outside the Capitol, I am the kind of person who sees a problem and takes action. When I saw access to the ballot box being denied, I offered free rides to the polls. And when I heard undocumented folks in our community were being denied vaccines, I started clinics to get them vaccinated. And when Roe was overturned, I started selling emergency contraception at cost. That's why I'm running for the assembly. I see firsthand every day the struggles that the people who are overlooked in our community face and how they feel left behind by the political elite. We need a politician who is a person of action, not words. I have a record of being effective in the Capitol and within our community and taking action and delivering results. That's why I'm asking for your vote.
Well, thank you all. And moving into the questions that I prepared, there are a couple that I did want to hear everyone's thoughts on. And the first one, it's a pretty simple one, and we're going to start with you, Supervisor Erickson, and then go down the line. But the question is, what makes you the best choice to represent the 77th Assembly District? And, maybe what makes you distinct from the other candidates in this race?
Well, as I've said, I'm running to ensure abortion access and to expand health care, to support education, birth through college graduation, protecting the environment, and also as an openly gay man, I'm running to ensure that the LGBTQIA plus community has representation in the state legislature. So really what sets me apart is that I've lived in District 77 for over 30 years. I've served on the Dane County Board of Supervisors for 22 of those years. I've made concrete improvements in the lives of District 77 residents. During that time, I have successfully passed legislation while being in the minority as well as the majority. I have a voting record that matches the interests and value of this district. Plus, I've represented 6 neighborhoods, so I'm familiar with the needs of those neighborhoods and communities in general. During that time on the county board, I have supported legislation and programs in human services. That's half the county budget. I was appointed to the Lakes and Watershed Commission. So if you're out enjoying the lakes or on the water, I've been aware of lake levels and how we can clean up our lakes. Additionally, I've also worked with the zoo and been on the zoo commission. So there's any number of things that are important to residents of District 77 that I've been working with over many years, 2 decades to be exact. And that's what sets me apart is my voting record. Thank you.
And Mr. Schumacher, we're going to go to you next, but that same question to you.
So when I think about how I'm different when it comes to a candidate, I think about how I have relationships with people all over the district. In fact, just the other day, I was talking to somebody at a door about prescription drugs and how they were forced to go to a mail order pharmacy and how they have a type 1 diabetic in their house, and their mail order pharmacy called them and explained to them how they were going to mitigate the fact that they couldn't send them insulin in the mail, even though there was insulin at a pharmacy a mile and a half down the road that they couldn't get access to. It's these kinds of things in healthcare that need to be fixed. We need to work on solutions that increase access and reduce costs of prescription drugs and all of healthcare. It's important that everyone have care and everyone have the right to go to the provider that they'd like to go to. Currently, we have no progressive healthcare providers in the state assembly. We're going to get the opportunity to work on healthcare because healthcare is a bipartisan issue. And when I'm in the state assembly, I will stand up as the voice of the patient and the provider and make sure that lobbyists don't write the laws going forward.
You think I learned how to use Zoom by now, given that this is the 4th forum that we're doing, but not yet. Ms. Mayadev, that question for you as well.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm a mother. I'm the only mother. I'm a child of immigrants, and I've spent my career working for women, children, and families. I am a reproductive rights advocate, and I've been doing this work throughout my career. Right now, I work at the university, at the School of Medicine and Public Health, with nonprofits and public health departments working on maternal child health. So I have the real experience with the issues facing communities in Madison and across the state today, and I know how to make solutions a reality. My years of experience have given me a deep understanding of state policy and how it can be crafted for real people. I've worked in state government, so I know the inner workings, and I have the strategy that's needed when the Democrats are in the seat of power. And that's what's going to happen this fall. The Democrats will be in the seat of power, and we need people to lead. So as a Georgetown law graduate, I'm ready to defend reproductive rights, our democracy, and public education on day one. And I'm the only one with 2 children in the Madison public schools. So that experience and knowledge is why I've been endorsed by Governor Jim Doyle, Lieutenant Governor Barb Lawton, Senator Kelda Roys, and other state representative Fran Hong, and other leaders who understand that I know what it takes to get things done.
Well, thank you all for those answers. And on a slightly different note, this is a question that was actually emailed in from a reader of ours who I believe lives in the 77th district, and I thought it was a great question, so figured I would put it to you all. They were wondering, what is one example of the bipartisan work that you have done that is a sign of how you would act, the kind of work you would do if you were elected to the state assembly? And for this one, we're going to start with Mr. Schumacher.
Thanks for that question. What I first think of is every day at the pharmacy, people come in, they do not agree with me on everything politically, but we have to build relationships and trust before we can ever talk about the medication that we're going to give these people. And we have to do that because if we just go and tell them, take this medicine, and we don't have trust, then it's not going to work for them. And then I think about my time working on the pharmacy examining board, where we were tasked with drafting rules that were going to be used in pharmacy. And those rules, it's interesting, the government has a whole host of lawyers that draw those legal documents up for you. And much like in the legislature, the pharmacy examining board basically doles out the information that they think is important, and then the lawyers write the rules so that it can be used to govern the pharmacists throughout the state. And so I was proud of that work. We pushed back against Governor Walker when he wanted to basically reduce the licensing bar for pharmacists in Wisconsin. And I was proud of expanding care throughout the state of Wisconsin with the rules that we drafted.
And that same question for you, Ms. Mayadev.
So when I was at the Children's Defense Fund, I worked a lot on child health and child hunger. And children are great connectors. When I worked across the aisle, there are constituents in rural areas that are hungry and need coverage. And there are constituents that live in urban areas. And so there's a place where we can meet, where we can bridge that rural urban divide. And I've seen that. I've done that work. In Wisconsin right now, there was just this last session, a postpartum bill that was actually co-sponsored by Senator Baldwin, who is a senator on the Republican side of the aisle. And it was to cover women for 1 year after they give birth if they're on Badger Care. So this is a postpartum coverage bill. That passed in the Senate 32-1. It went to the Assembly. Unfortunately, Speaker Voss didn't pull it up for a vote, but there was Republican support for that. There were Democrats supporting that. We're one of the last 2 states in the country to not cover women who are on Badger Care and that give birth postpartum, even though we have alarming maternal mortality, morbidity rates, especially in our communities of color. And so there are plenty of things that we can work on with both sides of the aisle, and I look forward to doing that.
And Supervisor Erickson, that same question for you as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, I think that's a great question. So over 20 years ago, when I ran for the county board, I got a reaction of, why would you want to do that? And I've gotten some of that. as well now running for the assembly if we don't have a majority. But when I started on the Dane County Board 22 years ago, and that's a legislative body here in the state of Wisconsin, I was basically in the minority. So in order for me to get anything done, I had to work with people from the other side. And I did that. And my first example was passing 3 resolutions that dealt with biking and bike paths. So the Capital City Trail had been built and created by Dane County, but we entered into an agreement with the state for administrative purposes, which created a fee. Anyway, to get those passed, I had to work with folks from the other aisle, from the other side of the aisle, because I was in the minority. So that was one example. The second example was when I learned about eco-municipalities and I wanted to implement that here in Dane County government operations. Again, we were in the minority status, but it was smaller. I still had to get votes from the other side. And you learn that by working with people and trying to meet people where they are, being diplomatic and being respectful. Right off the bat, when I first started, there were other supervisors from the other side of the aisle who were very conservative, who liked working with me, felt I had the right demeanor and the right interest, and was very positive to work with. So that's how I would do that, working with people across the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you, Aaron, for sending that question in. Now I'm going to move on to some questions that I have for each of you all. I've determined all of this randomly, but again, if any of the candidates wants to weigh in, just raise your hand and we will make that happen. The first question for Ms. Mayadev, this is maybe the issue that we have heard from readers about the most, and it is, should the legislature set any limits on abortion access beyond the restrictions that are currently in state law?
No. Emphatically no. My rights, the rights of my daughter, and the rights of all women and birthing people in Wisconsin are sacred. The options for reproductive health should be decided by doctors' offices and families, not on the assembly floor, not by politicians. The rights to reproductive freedom are under attack here in Wisconsin and across the country, and we need to stand up. We cannot go back to 1849. We have to take back that abortion law. We have to take back other abortion bans and waiting periods. We must have free, complete control over our bodies. And I work at the UW School of Medicine Public Health on maternal child health issues, so I know deeply what's at stake for women, children, and families. And I don't want to lose our OBs and our GYNs who can't have their whole toolbox to take care of women. And I don't want to have a looming threat of a lawsuit for them. So we need to enshrine the right to reproductive freedom. And I will work on that day one.
And Mr. Schumacher, I see you're raising your hand. You have 1 minute if you'd like to add something.
So I agree 100%. We need to make sure that we enshrine the right to bodily autonomy in the Wisconsin State Constitution. Bodily autonomy is important when it comes to both reproductive rights in the form of birth control, IVF, IUDs, emergency contraception, and abortion. We also need to make sure that we stand up for the rights of queer and trans folks and make sure we bring everyone to the table when it talks about bodily autonomy in the Wisconsin State Constitution. I think about when Roe fell and I was talking to patients about emergency contraception and they were scared. I had grandmothers coming in worried about granddaughters and mothers worried about aunts or nieces, and they all were worried because they wanted their rights to be enshrined in the Constitution.
And Supervisor Erickson, you're also raising your hand, so feel free to take 1 minute as well on this.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add that we should enshrine bodily autonomy into state law, and no one has the right to tell women how to run their own health care or to prevent any individual from seeking gender-affirming care. Additionally, the county board has passed resolutions that dealt with abortion, that told the legislature what to do and to stay out of our private lives, and that we are adamantly support a pro-choice position. We've also done the same thing regarding LGBTQIA rights, and I've been a supporter of that and a leader in that area. So I just wanted to mention that briefly. Thank you.
Thank you all. And Supervisor Erickson, we're actually going to stay with you for this next question. What do you see as the biggest economic issue facing Dane County, and what should the legislature and the state assembly do about it?
Thanks for that question. Well, there are many issues that are affecting Dane County's economy and the state as a whole. But the main one that I wanted to talk about this evening, or would want to talk about, and I usually do, is that of affordable housing. That's a crisis right now that we see here locally in Madison, throughout Dane County. And from what I have learned, it's throughout the state as well. There are many things that the state government could do. The state could increase the homestead tax credit, which could be for homeowners and renters. The other thing that I'm interested in, being in local government, is the state could help local governments with affordable housing funds. But we also at the state level could consider things such as social housing, plus more tax credits that could be used by communities to, again, create more low income and affordable housing. I use those two examples because that's what the project that is in my district, basically in my neighborhood, the Bayview project. I was able to get support for 1.3 million through the county for the housing portion, and those are things that the state could do. And also I wanted to bring up Bayview again because it does have a community center, which has really been an anchor for that neighborhood and has made that a very successful neighborhood. And the Bayview project is a template, not only for Dane County, but for the entire state. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. And we're going to go to Mr. Schumacher for this next question. Wisconsin has not raised the minimum wage since 2009. It still sits at $7.25 for hourly workers. Should the legislature do so? And if so, what dollar amount should it be set at?
Well, I tell you, when I think of this, I think about the people who work for me. Many, many years back, I decided that I was going to set my minimum wage at my business at $15 an hour because I saw the people who were working for me struggle to afford housing, to afford transportation. And so it was very important for me that I pay what could be considered a livable wage. So I think that the state legislature should raise the minimum wage to a minimum of $15 an hour. We know that costs for groceries are skyrocketing. We know that costs for housing is skyrocketing. And until we fix these problems by, fixing the housing crisis through building more units and working with local economies to find the right answer, we need to provide workers with the ability to take care of their families. And so I would be a proponent of a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Ms. Mayadev, this question will be coming back around to you. And the legislature in the most recent session in 2023, Republicans in the legislature, I should say, proposed a bill that would restrict camping on public land and shape how local governments access funding from the state to handle homelessness. In your mind, is homelessness an issue that should be handled at a fundamentally local level, or is there a role for the state to play as well? And if so, what does that look like?
Thank you. Well, we need to make targeted investments into housing programs as well as wraparound services. And that's a proven way to address economic insecurity. And so at my work at the UW School of Medicine and Public Health, I work directly with community members to address social determinants of health. So we know poverty exacerbates negative health outcomes. And so this is a problem we can address. Our state can invest in homelessness program and empower localities to create programs that fit their community. Instead, what we've seen is Republicans try to prevent local leaders from taking charge. Actually, Assembly Democrats introduced a bill, the Wisconsin Opportunity Act, which would have made critical investments to address homelessness. This included an additional $5 million into the Housing Assistance Program and the creation of a program to help help families have economic hardship. The ones that do can receive rental assistance. And as your representative, these are the kinds of programs that I would like to see to help move families into secure housing.
Supervisor Erickson, this next question will be for you. The Wisconsin legislature has not legalized marijuana in any form. Should the state legalize medical cannabis, recreational cannabis, both effectively? And what issues should legislators really be keeping in mind when they are considering this in the Capitol?
Thank you for that question. Basically, yes to both. We should legalize it for private use, but also definitely for medical use. I can't imagine not allowing it for medical purposes. I've known of folks who have tried to do that in the past, and it's been very challenging when it seemed like the results, were definitely there. So my answer is yes to both private and medical use. I also think that if it can be legalized, it can be kept safe and kept out of the hands of youth if that's an issue. The big thing to keep in mind is obviously safe use, but then we can also tax the sales of it. And right now we're losing revenue to our neighboring states. Right now people are going to those states and we lose out on that revenue. Obviously we have lots of needs for that revenue, including education across the state, mental health services, and substance abuse programming. Also, prohibition has created a large incarceration disparity for a non-harmful substance. It didn't work with alcohol. It's not working with marijuana or cannabis. And also, finally, one other thing I just wanted to mention, legalization could be a pathway for entrepreneurs that could provide some personal growth for individuals and help the economy in some ways.
Mr. Schumacher, this next question is for you. We've been talking a little bit tonight. You all are running in a new district. There are new maps this election cycle, which I think raises the question, should the Wisconsin legislature implement some sort of nonpartisan entity to draw district lines for the United States Congress, the state legislature, or both?
Well, I would like to say thank you for the new maps. It is very important and vital for the state of Wisconsin to have these maps because it's going to finally allow the people of Wisconsin's voice to be heard loud and clear. As far as going forward, I propose using the same type of citizens commission that the state of Michigan uses. I believe that the state of Ohio has it on their ballot for the next election. And that Citizens Commission is set up to be members of Republican and Democrat and and independents. There would be 3 people from each of those leanings, and those people would be barred from having served in government prior and for several years after they were on this commission. And this commission would receive data and information, and they would come up with a map that they propose. And if they couldn't come up with a map, they would pick a few, and then the Supreme Court would then pick the map that they were going to use for the next election. The very important part in this whole thing is that the legislature has no part whatsoever in building the maps.
And Supervisor Erickson, I see you have your hand raised. You have a minute to talk a bit about maps.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. I just wanted to mention briefly that in the past few years, the city council and also the county board, districting came up again, and always in the past, politicians were involved. So at the county board level, what we did was we had a committee review it. We decided that we would keep all elected officials, meaning county board supervisors, entirely out of the process. That's what we did. And again, that's what I think we should do at the state level as well. The thing I wanted to point out, though, is that I voted for that. I supported that. And literally, the district that I'm in now on the county board is a district that was created that way. There were no politicians, no supervisors, no elected officials involved in that. And I supported it at the local level, and I will support it at the state level as well. Thank you.
This next question is for Ms. Mayadev, and we're going to stay on the topic of elections. Should the state make changes to the Wisconsin Elections Commission, or do you believe that the current system of administering elections and helping support the work of county and local clerks across the state is adequately serving election officials and voters?
Thank you. So the Wisconsin Election Commission supported our democratic process through the 2020 election, facing unprecedented challenges from COVID to the ultra-MAGA right election denial. Elections official administrator Megan Wolf has done an amazing job, and she has worked hard to keep elections secure and in accordance with our current law. So I just applaud her. I believe the ABA gave her an award for being a hero. She's a tremendous public servant. So I applaud her and her work, and we need to keep her safe and all of her team safe. And so I would make sure to do that when we're in the state assembly, to make sure that our officials that are doing very important work and poll workers are safe and secure. However, there are commissioners who have been chosen partisan interests over the interests of democracy. And one of those is Commissioner Bob Spindell, an appointee by Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu, was a fake elector in 2020 and actively tried to overturn the will of the people. I think the Wisconsin's Election Commission does great work, but we need common sense safeguards to prevent fraudulent electors from serving on the commission.
And we're going to stay on democracy and elections for one more question because it is so important, and go to you, Supervisor Erickson. What is the biggest thing that the state legislature should do to strengthen democracy here in Wisconsin?
Well, there's multiple things that, we could do. The main thing is to make sure that everyone who can vote or who has the right to vote is able to actually vote. We need to make sure that citizens of the state have access to all forms of voting, including access to drop boxes, which was recently reinstated, and making sure that everyone, again, who's eligible to vote can vote. We need to make the process as easy as possible. That can also involve same day and keeping and maintaining same day registration. That's something that I've found to be very helpful. I've worked at polling places, going for way back. And that's something that's great to see people, being able to come up and to actually register the day of. Something else that also concerns me is something that I saw in Milwaukee more, but I think could be an issue here or in our larger urban areas is to make sure that we have enough polling places so that lines are, not too long for folks. And also, if there's any way that we can, we talked about minimum wage earlier, make sure that that's what we're paying for poll workers, and any way to attract more poll workers so that the shifts aren't so long, and that we can just move lines along and, make it accessible for as many people as possible. I'm also open to other options. For example, perhaps moving or making voting day an actual holiday, possibly moving it to the weekend as well. Thank you.
And Ms. Mayadev, everyone wants to weigh in. We're going to start with Ms. Mayadev. She had her hand up first, and you have 1 minute on this question.
Okay, great. So one of the ways that I would protect our democracy and actually strengthen it is to have a voter initiative, a ballot initiative process where the voters can put something on the ballot and then put it in the Constitution. We don't have that in this state, and we need that. And then I also just want to make a plug for the 2 constitutional amendments that are on the ballot on August 13th that we should vote no. These are both power grabs by the Republicans, and they're on the ballot on August 13th when we are, and we just need to vote no to both of those. So thank you for taking my hand.
We'll make it, I swear. Mr. Schumacher, 1 minute for you.
Well, thanks to Ms. Mayadev for saying that. We need to make sure that the people of Wisconsin have a voice when it comes to elections. And so I second the idea of a citizens ballot initiative because we never want to be in a place again, like we have been for the past decade, where the people want things done and the legislature basically says, we won, you lost, it's over.
And Mr. Schumacher, we are going to stay with you for this next question. Shifting gears a bit, should the Wisconsin legislature enact a red flag law or a law that allows law enforcement to seek a judicial order for a person considered to be a risk to themselves or others to surrender their firearms?
So we need common sense gun safety and gun reform legislation. We have too many firearms in circulation. We need to make sure that we reduce the number of firearms we have and that we hold those accountable that use firearms. I think back to one way that I tried to do this is several years ago, there was a buyback program in Dane County, and I contributed significant funding to that through the Boys and Girls Club at Dane County because it's important that we remove firearms off the street. And then we need legislation such as red flag laws. And we need to make sure that we have laws that promote safe storage of weapons because we cannot have the gun violence that we're seeing in today's society. We need to have that common sense gun reform, and we need to also have a public service information outlet that talks about gun safety, classes that teach about gun safety. And I think we need to raise awareness about the risk to someone who lives with a gun in their home as it increases their risk significantly for suicide.
And Ms. Mayadev, you're raising your hand. 1 minute on that question as well for you.
Yeah, I'm standing up for children. I mean, as a parent, we send our children out to school or park. We don't know if our child will come home. Firearm and violence has caused an untold amount of harm on our families. And I've done this work to stop gun violence at the Children's Defense Fund. I led an agenda. I worked actually with groups like Sandy Hook Promise, where I testified side by side on a child access prevention law with Mark Barden from Sandy Hook. And so we need to implement common sense policies like a cap law. We actually have one in Wisconsin, but it's not strong enough. We need to raise the age where there's strict liability, not at 14, but for 18 or older. If a parent or a guardian knows that a child can access that firearm, we need to protect children and all of our community from the senseless gun violence that we see. And I will do that. I will lead that in the state assembly. Thank you.
My questions are so good, everyone wants to weigh in on them. Supervisor Erickson, you have 1 minute as well.
I just wanted to wrap up that yes, in the legislature, I will support any type of gun control, common sense or otherwise. Growing up here in the Midwest, I have been around guns. After moving to an urban area, making my life here in an urban area, I have a lot of concerns about guns and the harm that it causes. And I definitely support gun control, common sense or otherwise. We need to look at every single option that we can. We've got an epidemic, and it's a health issue, and it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be investigated. And hopefully, we'll have a majority so that we can address that as an issue in the legislature. Thank you.
And we're going to go back to Ms. Mayadev for this next question. How can the state ensure that police departments in Wisconsin and in Dane County are fair and just in how they carry out their duties and do not engage in racial profiling?
So, our criminal justice system has a history of over-policing community of color. I worked on issues of incarceration when I worked for a Democratic governor. And so I know that we need to make sure that there's civilian oversight. There needs to be civilian oversight boards to create accountability. And so Madison was one of the first municipalities in the state to create a police civilian oversight board. And I'm proud that our community is at the forefront, but this is something that we should see across the state. And then I also think that model should be followed, but then I also think that we should ban warrior style training and promote training and de-escalation so that officers have the training to resolve situations and not turn interactions into something that may be more violent. And so we also need to move to a statewide program for the use of body cameras for local agency, and anything that promotes transparency and accountability is very important. And I would stand for those in the state assembly. Thank you.
Supervisor Erickson, this next question is for you. What is the biggest thing the state of Wisconsin can do to fight climate change? And there's been a lot of talk about this at the federal level, new programs, new initiatives, new spending. But what can the state be focused on to take action on this important issue?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Andrew. There's so many things that the state can do. It ranges from more solar panels, promoting more solar panel use, and generating electricity via solar panels, to encouraging alternative forms of transportation, including charging stations for electric vehicles, but also supporting mass transit. We need to allow local regions to, again, establish RTAs, or regional transit authorities, to encourage more mass transit. This would help local communities with their mass transit systems. And also an example of this would be Madison with Madison Metro. Right now, Madison Metro isn't getting any funding from the state, so that's an issue. But I'd worked in the past and lobbied on getting a regional transit authority. We finally got that through the state legislature, only had to have Scott Walker wipe it away with one stroke of his pen. So that's something that we need to do, and to encourage more mass transit as well. Additionally, the state can also fund more bike and pedestrian paths to encourage options or alternatives to driving every place. That's something I did on the county board. That's something I will support at the state as well, and that's something that the state could do. Finally, state government could implement sustainability principles in all its government operations, as I initiated and led in Dane County government. This would lower the state's overall carbon footprint and set an example for private businesses and other organizations throughout the state. Thanks.
And Ms. Mayadev, you are raising your hand. 1 minute on climate change as well.
Yeah, so we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. So this is a very important issue. So we need to have clean water. We need to have clean air and a livable climate for our children and our future generations. And so I have to mention PFAS, right? We need to empower DNR to protect our air and our water from PFAS and hold polluters accountable. And we can become the green energy state. We just need to be aggressive. We have to have an aggressive plan to move off fossil fuels. We spend close to $44 billion annually to import fossil fuel energy into Wisconsin, and it's unacceptable. We need to join Governor Evers to move off fossil fuels by 2050, and that's something I would support in the state assembly.
And Mr. Schumacher, your hand is raised as well. Oh, no, it's not.
No, it is. I was taking it
Go
down.
ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say how great it is that Democrats are unified on this message of climate change. And I think we need to definitely get to a place where kids can ride their bikes to school again safely. Because when that happens, it's not going to cost that much for society to do this. But when that happens, it gives back hours of time to parents that are not sitting in a car, sitting in traffic, sloughing off plastics off their wheels and causing emissions. It allows for them to have that time back. And we need to find solutions that make it easier for people to live their lives while also saving the environment. We also need to work very hard on bringing passenger rail to Wisconsin, because when we get a trip to Milwaukee faster in a train than a car, everybody wins.
And Mr. Schumacher, we're going to stay with you for this next question. As I said earlier, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, go Badgers, is in your district. Is the declining state support for public higher education the biggest barrier in your mind to the UW system's success? Or are there policy changes needed either in the legislature or the Board of Regents level to ensure the sustainability of UW-Madison and the rest of the universities of Wisconsin?
So the University of Wisconsin is an economic engine that fuels all of the economy of Wisconsin. It produces so much research and development that goes on to build businesses that stay in Wisconsin and produce jobs. It produces students who go on to do great things within the community. And we need to work hard to make Wisconsin a place where those people who graduate from the University of Wisconsin want to stay and raise families. And so that's why we need to work so hard on making it affordable to live here and making it safe to live here and making transportation effective here. We need to make sure that the University of Wisconsin is completely autonomous when it comes to how to run its business from the state legislature. The state legislature should fund the UW and fund it at the levels that it needs to, in order to take care of all the things that it needs to do. But in the end, the university systems and the technical colleges across the state of Wisconsin know how to do their job and know what's best for their student populations. And we need to empower them and back them 100%.
And Ms. Mayadev, you're raising your hand, a minute on the UW system.
Yeah, so we're Badgers in our household. I work for the UW School of Medicine and Public Health, and my husband's the dean of the University of Wisconsin Law School. And the UW-Madison is under threat from the ultra-MAGA right. They have an openly hostile agenda to higher education. Last session, we saw pay raises, desperately needed engineering building was held hostage by the Assembly Speaker because of their contempt for diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are core values that are essential to UW's mission of being a world-class leader in education and research. And I will stand up for these values and share the good work of UW-Madison does to fulfill the Wisconsin idea because of its training, research, and service. That is very important to me, and I will take that to the Assembly if I were to be your representative.
And Supervisor Erickson, 1 minute on the UW system for you as well.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. I just want to mention briefly, it's been covered, but as an openly gay person and an openly gay or LGBTQIA plus elected official, diversity and equity and inclusion training is very important to me. And it's shameful that it was used as a bargaining chip in the way it was by the Republicans in the legislature. I support DEI. I always have. Where I've worked in the past, I've worked with DEI, and it's something that we work with in county government. And it's not something that should be used the way it was in regard to the university system. I think DEI is applicable to our UW system, but also all levels of government, as well as, private business and the private sector. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. And we have one last round of questions that I'll try and move through quickly, but we started doing this 4 years ago, these debates. And one thing we like to do is ask a lighter round of questions to help all 28 of you out there watching at home and everyone watching back on YouTube get a sense of who these folks are as people as well as candidates. So to that end, the toughest question of the night, Ms. Mayadev, what is your favorite restaurant in the 77th district?
Well, I have to say there are many good restaurants in the 77th, but I love Pasture and Plenty. Actually, Christy McKenzie has been a wonderful supporter of our campaign and the things that I'm standing for to run on for the state assembly, such as reproductive freedom. So that's a great place to eat. Also, Phil Hurley is a supporter, and God, Gates and Brovie is a wonderful place to eat. So I could go on and on, but those are two I'll mention.
I am taking notes on the restaurant recommendations across all of these, so I'll have my nights out planned for the next year or so. But Supervisor Erickson, when you're not out knocking doors and you're not in a Dane County board meeting, what do you like to do for fun? What are your hobbies?
Well, one of my hobbies is related to what I've done in regard to, being in county government, being on the county board, and that has to do with spending as much time on water as possible. So whenever I do have time, which isn't that much of late, is to be kayaking or canoeing on any water body near my house or elsewhere. For example, Lake Wingra or Monona Bay, or Wingra Creek. So that's what I do. And yeah, that's what I spend time doing. Additionally, which I need to do more of, is also the next thing would be biking as well.
And Mr. Schumacher, one more for you. Who is your biggest role model?
Wow. My biggest role model would be the pharmacists in my hometown that I grew up in. I grew up in a small town in Illinois, and Charles Owens was the pharmacist who owned the pharmacy in that small town. And, from when I was a little boy, I would go in to pick up stuff from my mom, and he would know my name and he'd know everything that we needed in our family, and he was connected. And I've tried to emulate that my entire career.
Well, and we really appreciate all of you taking the time to answer a lot of questions, both silly and serious. And it's now time for closing statements. Ms. Mayadev, we'll start with you. You have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you for holding this, Andrew. I am a mother. I'm a reproductive freedom fighter, and I'm a child of immigrants. And my husband, Dan, and I are raising a family together. In a time where Trump is threatening to deport millions of Americans that look like us. And in times like these, I can't help but reflect on the promise of the American dream. My parents came and immigrated to this country in the late 1960s with virtually nothing and taught me and my sisters love of country and the need to give back. And Dan's grandparents came from Japan, and my father-in-law, his father, was born in Santa Monica, California, but was interned in Manzanar during World War II. And so now Dan is the dean of the law school, one of the finest institutions, and I'm standing here before all of you with the chance to be the first South Asian in history in this Wisconsin legislature. So opportunity of the American dream is what I want to protect. We need to make sure that other people, other children, future generations have the same opportunities that we did. And that's what I will do. So your vote in August is not only for me and it's for us standing together, asking you to stand together to send a message about who we are as a state and a country. This is about our future promise, and it's a time that we do it together. Our time is now. Thank you.
And Supervisor Erickson, 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. I've been working for you for the past 22 years. If you are or have a family member who is LGBTQIA+, I have championed your rights to marry and to be treated fairly by businesses working with county contracts. If you ever rode on a bike path, I helped build it. If you ever swam or boated on a Madison lake, I led efforts to protect clean water. If you ever took your kids to the Henry Vilas Zoo, I helped guide the zoo during critical growth and maintain its financial stability. The question for voters is not so much what each candidate says, but rather which candidate has a proven track record in achieving results. I'm the candidate whose effectiveness in public office is already documented in the lives of District 77 residents. I'll continue fighting for Madison and making real improvements. I look forward to representing you in the Wisconsin State Assembly. Thanks to my opponents, Andrew, Aaron too, and the Cap Times for hosting. I ask everyone to vote by August 13th. Absentee ballots are available right now, and early voting starts July 30th. And finally, I ask for your vote, and please, please vote no on both constitutional amendments. Thank you.
And Mr. Schumacher, you have the last word. 2 minutes for you.
Thank you so much. As a father of a non-binary person and the father-in-law of a trans woman, I see exactly how minorities are treated in society. I think it's very important that we make sure and stand up for the rights of every single person. And as it's been said, we stand up and enshrine reproductive rights and bodily autonomy in the state constitution. In my role as a pharmacist, I had the opportunity to open my store. And when I did that, I decided free delivery was going to be my mainstay, because I knew that we were going to be able to take care of the people no one else was thinking or taking care of. And 11 years later, here we are doing just that. And I think about the people that we take care of and how they need to be we need to raise them up and make sure that the legislature realizes who they are and what they need. And so I'm very excited when it comes to the new legislature. It's going to be close to 50-50. I hope that Democrats are leading at the end of it. But even if they're not, we're going to have the opportunity to work on important issues. And one of the important issues that we're going to have to work on is healthcare. Healthcare is by far a bipartisan issue that affects every voter across the state of Wisconsin. And we're going to have the opportunity to write laws that increase access and decrease costs of care for the citizens of Wisconsin. And when we do that, we need to have a Democrat healthcare provider in the state assembly to ensure that the rights of individuals are being held up and that the people of Wisconsin get a fair deal. And I would ask you for your vote on August 13th.
Chuck Erickson, Renuka Mayadev, and Thad Schumacher are the 3 candidates for Assembly District 77 in the Democratic primary. We thank them very much for coming out tonight and participating in this forum. And please go to captimes.com for everything you need in the run-up to August 13th. In the meantime, have a great night, everyone, and we'll see you Thursday for our next candidate forum.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.